All right, looks like we are live now, and I'm gonna just make sure that my YouTube stream starts going up. That looks like it's doing well. Looks like we got notifications going everywhere. So, all right, I think we are good to go. So, today I actually found myself with a little bit of free time, which is fairly rare these days. Did a really cool chat with a couple of the mentors in the group today. Gave some feedback. Did a live, what was the open review feedback video yesterday. And so, yeah, and really cool things are happening. Just launched actually the Sync Edge program. Now, that was only for those of you that were on my email list. So you had to have been on my email list to get the early access to that. I will be publicly making it available here on YouTube on Wednesday. And just be aware, I'm only allowing 50 members per month to sign up. I'm not allowing a huge horde, a rush of people to sign up all at once. And just word to the wise, on the first day that I made it available to my email subscribers, 40 people signed up on the first day. Okay, so just to give you guys an idea, if you sit on it, that's it. Like, there is no more adding on until the following month. So if you don't get in here in August 1st, which is on the Wednesday, you'll have to wait till September 1st to get in. Okay, so don't sit on it. Don't wait. If you're ready to submit, again, this is not for all producers, but if you're ready to submit to libraries and you just need to know who to submit to, you want a little bit of analysis, this is going to be a great, very powerful, and once in a lifetime kind of a service that you're not going to find anywhere else. So I think you're going to really love it. So stay tuned. Wednesday, I will be putting a video up on my channel with a direct link to it so you guys can check it out. But that's not what we're doing today. Today, I am just having fun. I'm kind of returning to my roots a little bit here. This is a rock metal track that I was sort of sketching out yesterday and a little bit more this morning. And I'm digging it. I'm not done with it. It's, it's not even mixed, not even really put together. I think I'm going to still... There's a lot of things I'm going to do, continue on with this track, but this is just one of these songs that, like, this kind of brings me back to a lot of the music that I grew up listening to. I was really into. Seven Dust is pretty much my favorite metal rock band of all time. I love the Deftones. I was into Tool. I was into Nonpoint. A lot of just all kind of those new metal rock bands back in the day. Those were the ones that I really grew up on. It was sort of my coming to age sort of a sound that I really, was in tons of bands doing this kind of music. And so it's kind of funny now doing it all completely electronically. Like, there wasn't a live guitar or drum recorded in any of this, but it sounds pretty damn live, actually. I'll play some of it for you in a second here. And this is not necessarily for TV licensing. I don't know where I'm going to put this track. If I'm going to put it somewhere, it might just be literally for me. Maybe I'll just put it up on my YouTube channel at some point. But I figured, I have this sort of skeleton here. I'll show you kind of how I'm going to flesh it out a little bit more. And probably mostly what I'm going to do today is sort of getting a rough mix together of just what I have here with the rock instruments. Like, I literally have, you can see up here, I have a drum track, quite a few different guitar tracks, and a bass track. And that's it. Like, I don't have any percussion. I don't have any synths. I don't have any sound effects. Excuse me. So it's pretty bare bones right now. This is just the rock elements. And I'm thinking, though, I will probably lean towards more of a... what would you call this? Kind of a little bit more electronic. I mean, I probably will bring this a little bit more into an industrial electronic rock sound, I think, just after what I've been hearing from what I've done so far. But anyways, I'll press play on it for a little bit here. And what I will do, though, as I'm sort of messing with this, is I'll probably have to mute my microphone. Otherwise, you guys are going to hear this slapback echo with the music because I have to kind of turn up my speakers quite a bit. And I don't want to do it with headphones. It just doesn't feel right to me. So I will be muting my microphone. I'll watch the chat, a little bit here and there, but I'm really not going to monitor it as closely as I normally do. I'm just here really to kind of jam out on this track and for you guys to enjoy on a Sunday, right? Is it Sunday? Yeah, man, losing track of time these days. So anyways, enjoy what you hear. So anyways, that's where it stands right now. Still a little bit rough, but it obviously gets me moving and headbanging, and that's always the first thing I need to have. If I'm going to keep working on something and keep mixing it and progress on with it, it's got to move me. Like, I got to feel it in my gut, and this one definitely is doing that for me. So I think what I'm going to do first is sort of fill out the drum tracks here. And what I've done here, obviously you can see that I have it just here in my, I have one track here. I'm using actually Steven Slate drums. Which I highly, highly recommend. I have a whole kit here actually going on. Steven Slate, you can check it out. This is actually an old version of what he does. He has a lot more modern stuff, more, you know, newer sounds and all that good stuff. But I basically just have one track doing all of my drums. But I'm not going to leave it this way because I need to mix everything independently. I need that kick, snare, hi-hats, and toms, 4 tracks essentially separated out. That's typically what I'll do. So what I'm going to do here is actually duplicate these out. I'm going to actually call this first one kick. Second one will be snare, then we'll do toms. And then I put cymbals together. I usually, you know, my hi-hats, my crashes, my rides, everything goes in one, essentially how it goes. Now what I'm going to do is actually copy and paste, well, by doing control or option click, actually getting these to actually duplicate. I'm going to undo that and bring it down. So now I want to save some sort of computer memory, though. I don't need to be loading every single drum track for every single track because I'm only using the kick on the top one, snare on the second one, toms on the third one, so forth, so forth. So for the kick, I'm basically going to come in through here and I'm going to start deleting stuff that I don't need, which is basically everything other than the kick because this is just eating up my computer space. What do I need all that loaded up for? I don't. And I've just noticed if I don't do this and I start adding a lot of tracks onto my session, it starts bogging things down, especially since I'm live streaming right now. It's another you know, add-on. I'm gonna leave these other snare things in there. It starts to add on to the weight of the CPU load, so I can't stream anymore actually, and obviously I need to be able to stream for you guys. So you get rid of everything other than the toms for this one. You don't need those snares. Don't need those snares. Got to be careful. Sometimes you do the wrong ones. And obviously cymbals. We're gonna keep everything cymbal related, so we don't need toms, we don't need snares, we will need all those hi-hats, and then we don't need the last two. So this is just like the audio janitorial work, not that fun. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that only the kick is being activated on the kick track. Obviously you can see if I load out here, I zoom out, you can see all of my MIDI stuff going on there. So this is the kick. We're on the wrong one. There we go. You need to go to kick. You can actually hear it. Then we can literally select everything above it. Now I don't actually delete stuff. I usually will just mute it. So there we go. Now if we just have this, we should just hear the kick. So you guys get the idea there what I'm doing. I'm just sort of making sure that only what I need is being included here. So this one, obviously, we don't need to kick. We want just a snare. There's the snare. And we don't need anything else at all. So we mute all that. I believe the snare is all on one line. Yeah. So all right. Toms, same thing. Let me just find out where these toms are. These toms are a little bit tricky. They're definitely not the kick and the snare, though, so you can get rid of those, mute those out. It's definitely not up here. This is the crash. See, this is where we get. Toms are one of the more tricky ones because they're kind of spread out all over the keyboard. So let me go in a little bit. Where was the top one? Yeah, that's not it. That's not it. Okay. Get rid of this. So basically, if you click on something and you hear that, so you want to keep that. If you don't hear anything, you can safely get rid of it. And the only reason why I do this, it's not going to, you know, trigger anything. But if I ever want to, where it goes. If I ever want to edit whatever's going on with the toms, I can see exactly where they are, right? I don't have to look through like, well, where's that tom hit? Because there's so much stuff going on here. Now I've actually narrowed it down so you actually can see exactly if it's colored. I don't know if you guys can see when it's that zoomed out, but when it's colored in like this, the, you know, orange and the red, as opposed to gray, you can actually see where these tom hits are. So that's why I'm doing this. And then for the cymbals, we do the same thing, but we just chop out everything else. So these ones are gone. Keeps doing that. Just do it a couple at a time then. Don't hear that. Don't hear that. You can get rid of that. So there's our cymbals there. Let's see what these drums sound like now together. Yes, a couple of questions. Do I make all the drum patterns? Yes, I make these myself. These are all my drum patterns. You've heard my style in Mythbusters. Yeah, this kind of stuff probably does get placed for sure, but I'm really honestly not doing this for music licensing. This is just for me, just for fun. It's really important, guys, and I know that a lot of you guys are really excited about music licensing, but you really got to do this once in a while. I mean, I really probably should do it a lot more than I tell you guys you should do it. But just having fun with music, just playing, producing something that's just for you, that you really want to do, and just getting excited about producing it is a really important thing to tap back into fairly often, so that you remind yourself of the love you have for music. Because if you don't do this, you start getting into the sort of robotic part of the music licensing business, which is you're cranking out tracks, which is still fun, and you see the growth, and you're in that sort of like upward momentum. So I understand that appeal and that desire. But that only lasts for so long. If you constantly are doing something and there's really no joy in it, eventually you'll start to just feel like you're making just whatever. Just, okay, it's functional music, but there's no joy in it anymore. There's no soul in it. There's nothing really like authentic about it anymore. So this is really important to do once in a while. You know, do one for yourself. Do one for your own just creative outlet. Whatever it is that really drives you and the kind of music you really want to do. Or if you want to like experiment with, like, you know, you want to do whatever, some crazy hybrid sound where you combine like EDM with like crazy, you know, orchestral music, but you're like, I don't know if that's going to work well with my licensing partners. Who cares? Just go have fun with it, because you might discover something really cool while you're just having fun, right? It's kind of like getting in the sandbox and just playing again, right? That's what this is really all about. It's a really important part to keep your energy up and your levels up for your creativity. If you don't do this, I've hit it, and I know a lot of other people have hit that wall too, where you start to feel like a cog in the machine, and you're like, okay, I'm making music for a living, but this kind of feels like just another day job again. And I've been there, and it really sucks, because now not only do you have that feeling of it being a day job, but you're doing music. And music is supposed to be the one thing that's not your day job. It's not supposed to be that thing that really feels monotonous and kind of boring and, you know, like you're stuck on a treadmill. So don't let that happen to you by making sure you do something like this once in a while, you know. So I'm going to go ahead and mute my microphone and just work a little bit on this mixing so you guys can see what I'm doing. Sorry about that, guys. I should have warned you. Some of these frequencies are going to get kind of harsh, so I hope you're not listening on headphones or that didn't blow you out. My bad. But just be warned, I will be making really loud, obnoxious sounds throughout this process. This is something I want to point out real quick. So just a minor amount of EQing can really help a very harsh guitar sound out. So all I've done here is just probably strip off a little bit more I can do here. Just stripped out the very low end and carved out a couple of little notches up here, but you can hear the difference. I'm going to mute myself and I'll go back and forth so you can hear what a difference just a minor amount of EQing can do. This is a huge issue I get with a lot of rock submissions with guitars, is that the guitars are just like, it sounds like a soda can being opened, and it's really harsh and it's all focused and concentrated in the high frequencies. So you hear a lot of this. It just sounds like somebody's opening up a spray ball or something. It's just really, really obnoxious. So a little bit of EQing can go a long way here. So let me just play back and forth. So you can probably hear a lot of that harshness really coming through, you know, without those two little bumps in there. So that makes a big difference, though, because it's like, okay, just a little bit of harshness, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is I have 3 different guitar tracks cranking out on this chorus. So if you have 3 different tracks that all have all that crazy stuff going on, then you're screwed. I mean, you're going to have just this horrible, noisy track at the end of it all. So my approach and philosophy with mixing is always subtract as soon as possible. If you don't need something, get rid of it. You've probably been noticing with my drums and bass already, I get rid of a lot of the low end. If there's nothing down there that I really need, start cutting stuff out, start making space. It's going to make for a cleaner mix overall. Somebody was asking about which guitars I'm using. One is called the Odin by Solemn Tones. Really, really cool plugin. It's actually recommended by one of the Syndicate members who told me about this one. Really incredible sound here with these guitars. And then I'm actually using a Guitar Rig 5 to get the distortion sound. So Odin does not come with the distortion sounds you need. You will need some sort of a guitar amp. I think Guitar Rig 5 is the best out there. I just personally think it's one of the best that sounds great. Actually, you can hear what it sounds like, so I'll mute the Guitar Rig. Sorry, I forgot to mute myself there. You probably heard a whole bunch of echoing. I won't let that happen again. At least I'll try not to. But here's what it sounds like without the Guitar Rig. That Guitar Rig cleans up all of that sort of sense of like, is that a real guitar? I don't know if it is or not. And so that's really why I do it, because it obviously makes that sound much more realistic. So, and I don't even think most trained guitar players, if I sent them this track, would even know if I recorded this or if I programmed this. We're getting to that point where you're never going to know how something was produced, including drums, strings, everything. It's all going to sound so good that you're not even going to know where the stuff comes from. So anyways, that's what that is. I'm going to mute myself now and keep going with this mixing. Okay, so that was a tiny amount of pitch variation that I just switched there for that pitch bend for that note. But that little amount of error will make that whole part just fall apart. Like that whole ending sort of epic end of the track just won't sound good because there'll be a little tiny problem with the pitch there. So you got to make sure you iron out those tiny little things or else the entire track will literally fall apart. And that's another reason why I'm kind of starting to love fake guitars or program guitars, because I can control the tuning 100%. If something feels weird, I can just go do what I did there and sort of mess with the tuning until it feels right. If you record it, it's got to be the one, not one take, but necessarily you have to record it perfectly. Everything has to be sitting in tune perfectly. And that takes a lot of time. I mean, you got to make sure that your guitar is probably retuned every couple of takes. And you can't just take it for granted that, I tuned, at the beginning of the session, it's all good. No, you got to really make sure that every chord, every strum, everything is just perfectly, in tune. In time, yes, it needs to be in time. But if you even have something that's a little bit off, like you can go through and, kind of edit the audio if you need to. But with MIDI, it's just like, right on the grid. I can adjust it. I can make some bends if I need to. It's just, I don't know. I'm really falling in love with this. I know a lot of you guys are guitar players. And you're like, oh, that's cheating. Like, whatever. I don't care what you think. I think this sounds great. It makes me fall in love again with making rock music. And I'm really digging it. And obviously, if you wanted to take this to a live setting, you could. I mean, everything that I'm doing here is done in a sort of realistic way. Like these are realistic guitar riffs you could play. These are realistic drum parts you could play. So it obviously has to follow the sort of believability, right? It has to feel like this really was created by a real rock band or a real guitar player or a drummer. And I'm definitely still following those sort of golden rules there. But I'm really loving the sound that just, to make this thing sound this great within the small amount of time that I've been working on this. It's awesome because I'm more of a creative ideas guy. I'm not really into the technical side of things. I'm not really sort of a tech head. I don't, fall in love with, I don't get so wrapped up in like plugins and sounds and, external gear and any of that stuff. I just love getting to a musical idea as fast as possible. I have musical ideas, songs just like already sitting in my head. And what's the fastest way to get it so it's sitting here on my screen? How do I do that? And all this new technology is allowing me to do it as fast as possible and letting me transmit my emotional desires or whatever, whatever I'm wanting to really put across here. I'm able to do that in a much quicker time than I ever could in the past, let alone the cost of putting together a track that sounds this good. Couldn't do that from your home studio even maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago for sure. So this is basically a miracle. I think it is. So I'm very excited about the prospects of where this new technology will take us. All right, I think I'll wrap it up for now. It's been about an hour, so I'm gonna go get to work on some other stuff and then come back to this. But one of you guys was asking, do I do collabs? Very rarely. Definitely not so much with instrumental music, because a lot of the times I produce pretty much everything in my tracks. If I ever do collaborations, it's usually with a vocalist, and that happens very rarely these days. I don't have a lot of opportunities that call for vocalists on my tracks. If I do, I obviously have a Rolodex of artists that I love to work with. If you do have some great vocals to offer, email me, send me some links, and I'll definitely like bookmark you if I ever do need a vocalist with your particular style. But no, musically, not so much these days, just because, you know, most of the time I'm able to handle most of the music that I have to produce. The exception I had was many years ago, I basically collaborated with a piano player who could really write some great piano lines, which I had no skill in doing. And so we basically ended up splitting those royalties for those kind of tracks. But these days, less and less that's really necessary. I think I've developed a little bit more in my abilities to produce since back then. So most of the day, most of the time, I'm just doing everything 100% on my own. Collaborations are really great, and I encourage you guys to do it if there's somebody that can help sort of fill in some gaps for you, or there's something that maybe you're not as proficient in. But you got to also remember that every time you collab, you are sacrificing some of your back end royalties. So it's good to do once in a while, spread your wings, kind of develop some relationships is really good. I still think, though, a majority of your work should be done 100% by you. And if you don't have the skills to be able to finish a track by yourself, you should start working on those skills to be able to compose 100% for yourself, because your royalties are your lifeblood in this business. And if you're giving away 50%, rightfully, like they've earned it, they're not stealing it from you. But if you're giving away 50% of your income on a regular basis, well, then you're going to make just 50%. So it's one of those things where I do think that you should build those skills up eventually. In the short run, sure, maybe just collaborate to kind of get your foot in the door, get some tracks out there, build your catalog. But in the background of that, you should be developing your own skills as well to be able to knock out everything by yourself. So let's see. So let's see if there's any questions I missed up. Those guitars layered, ones distorted. Yeah, all the guitars were distorted. If there's any phase issues with all the guitars, I mean, I'm definitely going to double check the phase issues, but usually not, because I'm using all different sounds, all different, amp simulators for all three different ones. So there's actually different audio waveforms that are being generated through that. If I was using all the same exact plugins, all the same exact guitar settings, then yes, you might run into some phase issues if it's all the same. But if you have some variation in the different sounds that are coming through, usually you don't have that problem. Cool. Glad you guys enjoyed. All right, I'm out of here. You guys have a great Sunday. We'll talk soon.